Have you ever sat at a family gathering, smiling politely as you pass the salad bowl, while inside you're replaying a hurt from decades ago? Maybe it was something your brother said, in a moment of cruelty, that you never quite forgot. Maybe it was the way your parents seemed to favor one sibling over another, leaving you feeling invisible. Or maybe it's something more recent, the sharp words of a grown child who accused you of being controlling, or the silence of another who simply stopped calling when you needed them most. That ache you feel has a name. It's called resentment. And the truth is, resentment is one of the heaviest weights people carry into their later years. You don't always see it on the outside. Folks smile, they make small talk, they keep up appearances. But inside, there's a stone lodged in the heart, and every family memory seems to rub against it. Resentment isn't the same as ordinary anger. Anger is hot, it flares up, and then it cools down. Resentment is colder. It's anger that never got resolved. It's the wound that didn't heal, tucked away in a corner of the heart where it lingers, waiting to be remembered. I once knew a man named Robert. In his late 70s, he was the kind of fellow who told jokes at every gathering. But whenever his brother's name came up, his smile vanished. His voice hardened. Decades earlier, his brother had cheated him out of a piece of land their parents left behind. That betrayal lived inside Robert like a stone. His brother had long since passed away, but Robert still carried the weight of that resentment, as if keeping it alive was the only way to keep justice alive. But all it really did was keep Robert's heart heavy. Here's the hard truth about resentment. Most of the time, the person we resent has moved on. Sometimes they don't even remember what happened, but we do. We replay the argument. We relive the words. We nurse the wound like it's proof of something. And every time we do, it's like cutting ourselves open all over again. Resentment doesn't punish them, it punishes us. It steals our sleep. It raises our blood pressure. It drains the joy from simple moments. And when you're in your 60s, 70s, or 80s, every ounce of peace matters. Carrying resentment is like walking uphill with a backpack full of rocks. Now, resentment against strangers or co-workers, that usually fades with time. But resentment against family, that one lingers. And it lingers because family is supposed to love us. They're supposed to protect us, understand us, and see us. And when they don't, when they hurt us instead, it cuts straight to the bone. A mother who always seemed to favor one child over another. A father whose words were sharp enough to wound. A sibling who betrayed your trust. A grown son or daughter who no longer calls or visits. These hurts aren't small. They're carried across decades, layered with expectation, disappointment, and love that feels bruised. I remember talking with a woman named Helen, now in her 80s. She told me she hadn't spoken to her sister in almost 30 years. The fight began with something small, the division of family furniture after their parents passed away. But the argument grew, old grudges piled on, and soon decades slipped by. She said, "If a stranger insults me, I can forget it in a week. But when my sister turned her back on me, I felt it every single holiday." That's the truth of family resentment. It doesn't just hurt, it defines how we experience the years that follow. The tragedy of resentment is that it doesn't just live in the past, it invades the present. It colors how we see everything. It turns conversations bitter. Even joyful family moments feel tainted because the old wound is never far away. It isolates us. We pull back from gatherings. We avoid calls. We let holidays pass without showing up. And it shapes our story. We end up telling the same grievance again and again, as if repeating it will finally give us the closure we never got. And beyond the emotional toll, Resentment wears on the body. Stress hormones rise. Sleep becomes restless. Doctors have found that bitterness and unresolved conflict weaken the immune system and even shorten life expectancy. Carrying resentment is like drinking poison, hoping the other person will feel sick. But the only one being poisoned is us. I want to be clear about something. Letting go of resentment does not mean excusing what happened. It doesn't mean saying, "It didn't matter." It did matter. It hurt. It shaped you. But letting go means you're no longer giving that hurt power over your today. Think of it this way. You've been holding a burning coal for years, waiting for the chance to throw it at the person who hurt you. But in the meantime, it's burned your hand. Letting go doesn't erase what happened. It just means you stop getting burned. So, how do we begin letting go? For many of us, it starts with admitting the wound is real. Stop pretending it doesn't hurt. Stop pretending it didn't matter. Sometimes, letting go means setting new boundaries. If the person is still in your life and continues to harm you, step back. Protect your peace. Other times, it means expressing what you've never said out loud. I once met a man who had carried anger toward his late father for nearly 50 years. He finally sat down and wrote a letter, saying every word he had never dared to speak. Then he folded the letter, placed it in the fireplace, and watched the paper curl and blacken into ash. He told me he felt 20 pounds lighter. His father never heard the words, but his own heart did. Another woman told me she started writing letters to her grown daughter, who had cut off contact after an ugly fight. She never mailed the letters, but she filled a notebook with them. Some were angry, some were sad, some were full of longing. And slowly, through writing, she released the resentment. Her daughter never came back into her life, but the woman found peace for herself. And I once heard a story of two brothers who hadn't spoken for 40 years. They lived in the same small town, passed each other on the street, but never exchanged a word. Finally, when one was gravely ill, the other showed up at the hospital. They cried, they talked, they held hands, and they both said the same thing. I wish we hadn't waited so long. Resentment had stolen decades they could never get back. And then there was Margaret, who carried bitterness toward her son for most of her 70s. He had left home young, barely called and rarely visited. She told herself she didn't care, but every holiday she sat staring at the empty chair where he should have been. Finally, when she turned 80, she wrote him a letter. Not angry, not demanding, just honest. She told him she missed him. She told him she loved him, even though the silence had hurt. To her surprise, he called. They spoke for the first time in years, and slowly they began to rebuild something. She said to me later, I wish I had reached out sooner. I thought resentment was protecting me, but it was only keeping me lonely. And sometimes, letting go means forgiveness. Not for their sake, but for yours. Forgiveness is freedom. Here's the surprising part. When resentment is released, space opens up. There's room for peace, for joy, for new memories with the family you still have. Instead of replaying old wounds, you notice small blessings. A phone call from a grandchild, laughter at a dinner table, the comfort of knowing you've made peace inside yourself, even if you never got it from them. Sometimes letting go even heals broken relationships. Sometimes it doesn't. But either way, you win. Because you stop letting the past dictate your present. And if you've ever felt the relief of laying down a heavy bag after carrying it for too long, you already know what this feels like. That's the moment when you can finally stand taller, breathe deeper, and notice the sunlight again. If you're listening to this and you feel the sting of recognition, I want you to know you're not alone. Resentment is common, especially in families, but it doesn't have to be the story of your later years. So tonight, ask yourself, what resentment am I carrying? And what would it take to begin setting it down? Not for them, but for you. Because at this stage of life, peace is too precious to waste on old grudges. And here's something I've learned over the years. The older we get, the more we realize time itself is precious. None of us knows how many holidays, how many quiet mornings, how many phone calls we have left. Do we really want to spend them replaying the same old hurts? Or do we want to spend them lighter, freer, open to whatever joy is still waiting for us? One day, when people gather to remember you, do you want them to say you were the one who never let go of the past, or the one who found peace and shared it freely? That choice is yours. Resentment may feel like power, but peace is the real strength. Thank you for being here with me. If this spoke to you, share your story in the comments. Your words might help someone else begin their own journey of release. And if you found this message meaningful, I invite you to subscribe, so together we can keep walking this path of wisdom and freedom.